Good morning, and welcome everyone to the Wolverine Caucus. We're delighted that you're joining us today. We want you to continue to enjoy your meal as we have the opportunity to begin our program today. As you know, the Wolverine Caucus is the University of Michigan's way of helping to change the world one forum at a time. It's sponsored by the Office of the Vice President for Government Relations and the UM Alumni Association. My name is Dr. Veronica Wilkerson-Johnson, and I am pleased to be your host today. And we are going to talk about preserving the Great Lakes today. We have two very dynamic speakers here that have joined us. And to introduce them, we are honored to have State Representative Jeff Irwin from Ann Arbor, the great 53rd District, an alum of the University of Michigan and a proud supporter of the Wolverines. So without further ado, we'll invite Rep. Irwin, and we also want to welcome in our presence today Representative Clementi. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Representative Irwin.
Thank you. It is once again my honor to join the Wolverine Caucus and say go blue, and also introduce a couple of fabulous speakers again for today's program. First, we have Dr. John Callaway, and he is the Integrated Assessment Program Director for the Graham Institute. And this is an institute that does a lot of important research and work at the University of Michigan. I know them most from their very comprehensive and detailed report they did on fracking in the state of Michigan, which was certainly very helpful to the legislative work that I've done in my office. Dr. Callaway has a wealth of experience working on various projects with the Graham Sustainability Institute. But I also wanted to mention that back in 1984 to 1987, John served as an agricultural volunteer with the Peace Corps in Nepal. So I wanted to mention that because I think that's an incredible qualification. It says to me a lot about both his ethic and his body of work, and also it gives us an idea of how old he is. I also want to, I didn't have anyone to Michigan State. I didn't want to talk about them at this time, not at this time. But before I fumble the punt, let me also introduce Nicole Berg. Nicole Berg is the manager of the Planet Blue Ambassador Program. And that is one of the community engagement programs at the University of Michigan that works with faculty, staff, and students on trying to achieve the University of Michigan's sustainability goals and foster an ethic of sustainability within the university. She's doing a lot of work with all those groups, faculty, students, and the community, trying to put into practice on campus all these great sustainability ideas that can make our world a better place, but also save money, reduce pollution, and make the university a beacon for the kinds of practices that the university is researching and pioneering at the Graham Institute. So without further ado, Dr. John Callaway and Nicole Berg.
So good morning, folks. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. Nicole and I are going to talk about somewhat related but a little bit different topics of what we're doing at the Graham Sustainability Institute around the Great Lakes and also around water quality. What I'd first like to do is give you a little bit of overview of the Graham Sustainability Institute, what we do, how we operate, who we serve, what we're working on. And then I'll focus on one of our projects, what we're calling the Water Levels Integrated Assessment, looking specifically at the Great Lakes and lake level variability. In terms of a couple years ago, they were at historic lows. Right now, they're above average. That makes some real challenges in terms of if you're a shorefront property owner or a municipality in terms of working with that issue. So we'll talk about what we're doing there, how we're focusing on a topic and who we're working with. And then Nicole's going to talk about a local application in terms of what we're doing specifically in the Ann Arbor campus with our campus community around water conservation and water quality issues. So the Grant Sustainability Institute has been around for about 10 years. We're a unit of the Provost Office created to serve all the 19 schools and colleges at the University of Michigan. So it's just as likely for us to be working with somebody from the School of Natural Resources and Environment, either a student, faculty, or staff member, as it is for us to be working with somebody from the School of Planning, or the School of College of Engineering, or one of the departments in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. We've got a broad range of programs where we try to bring together folks around sustainability, both research and education. Our primary donor, a gentleman named Don Graff, whose father was actually a faculty member in the School of Natural Resources, really wanted to create the Graham Institute to be that leverage or catalyst to bring those different units together and to not compete with the research funding that the university brings in, but to work off of that and create new opportunities and really support creative and innovative work. We've got about 30 staff members, and we work with a wide variety of both internal and external groups to help develop our programs. We have an external advisory board made up of representatives from nonprofit, non-governmental, corporate organizations to talk with us about how they're seeing the topic of sustainability and give us some input. And then we also work with different faculty groups and the deans across the university too. We have about a $13 million a year budget that's made up of a variety of sources, gifts from organizations such as the Graham family, also grants from, gifts from the Dow Corporation, it's a strong supporter of our education programs. The Irv Family Foundation is supporting a lot of our research work. We get a substantial amount of our funding from NOAA, from the federal government. And then we also get support from the university in terms of putting all the different pieces together to support the work that we do. Our work covers a variety of areas. We lead the Presidential Initiative on Sustainability. Don Scavia, who is the director of the Graham Sustainability Institute, is the special counsel to President Schlissel on sustainability, again trying to serve as that convener for the university around sustainability issues. I think we worked with maybe all 19 of the schools and colleges, I believe so, through one of our programs or another, either one of our research projects or one of our student fellowship opportunities. We really try to work on real-world issues. There's so much wonderful work that's done at the university around basic research or lab research. What we try to do is work with the students and faculty in a particular area of expertise that might be right for a policy discussion. We don't fund a lot of say, preliminary field work on things or preliminary research into things. We try to operate more at the space where some work has already been done and there's an opportunity to have a discussion about what should we do, what are the options, either policy or best practices to put in place to address a challenge of a particular organization or the community. We spend a lot of time working with students. We have opportunities at the undergraduate, professional, doctoral, and postdoctoral level for students. And again, the primary work there is to convene students from across the university. So we have an undergraduate scholars program, kind of like an honors program for students interested in sustainability. It's a competitive program that students have to compete to get into. And I think this year with 26 students, we might have students from 19 different majors. And so it's a real opportunity for them to hear, if they're a German and philosophy student, to think how are they thinking about sustainability, how are they thinking about environmental protection, next to a student from engineering or a student from public health. And we try to extend the U of M experience in terms of what we're doing in dialogue with other partners. We work with about a dozen other universities that have similar institutes to the Graham Institute. We're connected through all different types of professional associations and research organizations around the country and around the world. We've got some dedicated centers. I've mentioned a little bit about our education program already. I primarily work with what we're currently calling our integrated assessment. I'll explain what that means in a little bit. We have a water center, which is for now focusing primarily on Great Lakes, but also recently starting administering a national estuary research reserve system where they're working with estuary reserves all the way around the country from Maine to Texas to California to Alaska, really supporting the collaborative science program as part of its research reserves. Again, what is the science that needs to be put in place to address key issues for those reserves, for the communities around the reserves? Focus on climate adaptation, not saying the work on mitigation is unimportant, but saying things are changing and we need to know how to adapt to different conditions that we're facing. We spent a lot of time working with cities throughout the Great Lakes region, US and Canada over the past couple of years to come up with different strategies and options for them to do to face the changing conditions that they're already working with. It's come up more than once in our meetings with different cities, is I don't want to get into the climate debate, but I know our pipes aren't big enough. So tell me how big to make our pipes, and jump to that practical application, and that's where we try to serve. And then we spend a lot of time on campus behavior, knowing that as a community of 80,000 plus students, faculty, and staff, we have our own footprint that we need to be aware of. And so we've done a lot of work to assist the university in developing specific goals and then to implement different programs or activities to help the university move towards those goals. Across all of our programs, we've got some common principles of definitely trying to build and work within a scientifically rigorous approach or context, again, really drawing on the strengths of all the different units at the university. We always try to be interdisciplinary in our approach to make sure that we are bringing in lots of different voices, both from different disciplines, but also different perspectives, different ideas about what is actually the issue. We work from local to global scales. We've got projects going on campus to projects that we're working on in Ghana and Peru and scaling up in Bangladesh and another project we're working on is looking at the topic of electronic waste and what that means in certain countries such as Ghana and Thailand. We always try to be engaged with practice to make sure our ideas or that the work we're coming up with have practical application, and try to be really collaborative, both within the university and with our partners outside the university. So one project I want to focus in on for the topic of today is our project for the water levels integrated assessment. And the purpose there is to try to come up with what are strategies, best practices, ideas, approaches, perhaps policy options, regulations that we can think about and pull together to address the topic of Great Lake variability. So they, just the past couple of years really highlights this situation. From January of 2013, we went from historic lows to very quickly, almost within a year and a half, to above average highs. Not historic highs yet, but above average highs. Really significant in terms of a system like the Great Lakes to have that amount of very quick variability. And one of our partners there, to call out our friends from the Office of the Great Lakes, we've often heard that there's two piles of letters in the Office of the Great Lakes. Probably, maybe there's more than two piles of letters, but on this topic there's two piles of letters. Water levels are too low, do something about it. Water levels are too high, do something about it. And so it's, how do we live with that? We live within that dynamic system. So what we're trying to do is come up with a set of strategies that will protect the ecological integrity, economic stability, and cultural values of the region around this topic of lake level variability. We know things are going to go up, things are going to go down. We've seen more up and down recently than in terms of historic trends in the past. So how do we prepare for that? How do we best plan for those changes? We're primarily focusing with this project on Lakes Michigan, Huron. Part of my education is now that's a hyphenated name, not for everybody maybe, but essentially it's one body of water. But through this, we're focusing on Michigan, Huron, and Erie, because those are the lakes where we've seen a lot of the variability, but they're also not regulated. We know there's the Sioux Locks, we know there's other controls further down in the system, so that's why we're focusing on Michigan, Huron, and Erie. in trying to identify these adaptive management options rather than control structures. Now there's a whole other perspective out there that says we need to do more to control the lakes. We need to put control structures in the St. Clair River. We need to do other things to kind of keep the levels where they're at. We're not taking that approach. We think there's some challenges with that, both politically, economically, and ecologically. Our approach is to look at how do we understand variability and how do we best live with that variability. So this whole approach that I've been talking about, integrated assessment, what it really tries to do is pull together lots of really good information and have lots of really deep conversations about what we can say about a particular topic, and then come up with some potential options, and usually a range of options. Not coming up with one option to say, like, this is what must be done. And I think a good example of that is, as Representative Urban said, we just completed one on hydraulic fracturing in Michigan. We looked at a full range of issues for that topic, focused in on a couple of areas like public participation, chemical use, and water resources. But within each of those areas, we identified a range of options and looked at the strengths and weaknesses of those different options. We did not come out and say, you know, this is what needs to be done on chemical use and this is the only approach. But here are some different approaches in terms of if you want to support more information about what is known about the chemicals that are used in hydraulic fracturing, here are some options for doing that. If you want to consider options for making decisions about water use, here are ways to go about that. So that's our approach to this integrated assessment methodology, is to come up with a range of options and to analyze those options from a variety of perspectives. Through that, we're hoping to both build consensus and help develop some shared perspectives around a topic and inform decision making. All of these assessments or projects like this kind of work along to the point of implementation. And they're meant to be there as a resource for decision makers, knowing that we at the university aren't the folks that are going to be implementing these, but we do try to provide guidance on uncertainty and different issues related to implementation, although we know we're not the person that's going to be implementing these projects. Essentially, you work through a process of understanding what the topic is about before coming up with an analysis of policies and options. And the common characteristic of these integrated assessments is not only is there disagreement about what we need to do at the end, there's disagreement about defining the topic in the first place, whether it's hydraulic fracturing, good or bad, lake levels up or down, good or bad. Each of those has its own set of challenges of just kind of defining the issue. That's informed by the research teams of students and faculty at the university that go through all of the information, do the either scoping work or the technical analyses that needs to go on so that we can kind of build a set of options out of that, along with stakeholder input from a broad range of folks. With the hydraulic fracturing one, we had over 1,000 people that we were in touch with, either gathering input or through different meetings or ways that they could submit public comment to us about the issue, to more focus groups like advisory committees that we put in place with different stakeholders from multiple sectors to give us input on different topics. All of that kind of works together, not so much in a linear format like this, but it's often kind of iterative in terms of understanding an issue and getting a little bit more input and refining things as we move forward. So more specifically about the water levels integrated assessment, we've gone through a variety of steps over the past year or so to just really understand what is the issue. How is it understood in Georgian Bay versus Southern Lake Michigan? What are the issues that people are concerned about? We did a pretty big survey about a year ago of over 1,500 respondents of what people, both their perspective and what they understood about lake level variability and what concerns they were facing and what types of information did they know. And we also put together an advisory committee of a pretty diverse range of folks from both the US and Canada, environmental organizations along with regulatory organizations. And we've met with this group multiple times over the past couple of year and a half to kind of put the plans together, but also when we have the researchers that are working on this group is really helpful to give input and help analyze and review the ideas that the research teams are coming up with. And so the guiding question for this integrated assessment is, what options can be put in place that are going to address environmental, social, political, and economic issues that are really going to help individual property owners, businesses, and governments live within a system that is variable. You know, there is going to be variability in the system. Lake levels are going to go up and going to go down. Some of the key issues that we're focusing in are infrastructure, water quality, recreation and tourism, shoreline economies, and near and shoreline habitat. So trying to get a broad perspective on this. But at the same time, we know we can't just give general recommendations for an entire region that's pretty huge and very different in terms of what the geology and what the conditions of Georgian Bay look like versus the Traverse City area, the Grand Traverse Bay area. So this is a multi-year project. All of these integrated assessments do take at least 2 to 3 years. We've just gone through this planning grant phase where we funded 7 teams that worked across the region in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ontario to give them some funds and some support for them to see, is it possible to really do a deep dive in a particular area on this topic with a particular set of concerns. And I'll explain who those groups were in a little bit and where they did their work. And then we're going to be working through, starting later, actually next month, focusing in on more specific analyses, trying to look at what are the status, trends, causes, and consequences of variability within a particular area. So each of these teams is very place-based, and we thought that was important to really come up with meaningful options for a local community to consider. But we also wanted them to not just think about that particular area, but if you're looking at there's other regions of high bluffs within the Great Lakes region. And so each of these teams has to focus in a particular area, but then also identify other parts of the basin that might be have similar conditions and where those same options could be applied. And then we'll work with our stakeholder groups and advisory groups and the analysis teams to kind of work through all of that and come up with an analysis of key options for an adaptive management approach. And then we'll continue to refine that. It's kind of this iterative process where the teams come up with their initial ideas, we share that with our advisory group and a broader group of stakeholders, gather some insight, they refine it a little bit more, and then they come up with the final report from this, which will be in about a year and a half. That will be a comprehensive report for the entire region on this topic with some very specific ideas and options based on local conditions. Just a little bit on the survey. I thought it'd be interesting to share some of the survey results. So this went out to over 1,800 actually responses from property owners throughout the region. Most of them are residential. We had, because of the way we sent the sample out and worked through some of our existing partnerships, there were more people in Lake Huron that responded to this, but we saw a similar set of responses, even though people were from, reporting that they lived in different areas. So most of the folks that responded were either from Huron or Michigan. The level of concern that they expressed, I think it's interesting to note that when they asked in general, how concerned are you about lake levels, they were very concerned. Okay, but then when we started breaking out of, well, what about economic, environmental, and social, those that kind of shifted down to more the key response, the main response there was that folks were slightly concerned. So we see a range of concern across the different topics, but overall, people are concerned about lake levels. And we also saw a range of, were they primarily concerned about high levels or were they primarily concerned about low levels? Well, given the timing of our survey, which is about a year ago, just as we were coming off historic low levels, I think you could see that there were more respondents that expressed some concerns about low lake levels, particularly recreational issues, operating expenses, and water quality. Whereas we had a significant number of high level impacts that people expressed, but not quite as many as what people were identifying as low water level impacts. Using that information, we've started to work with our teams and pull together resources from other offices, such as the NOAA-funded Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab in Ann Arbor, to put together some infographics and fact sheets to help folks understand the Great Lakes water level variability and what we're calling kind of the water budget. how much water comes in, how much water goes out, how do we know what's impacting the current levels. And so we've updated too small to see all the details here, but what this is a map of the basin and kind of shows the movement of water. This was put together by one of our colleagues, Elizabeth Laporte, the movement of water through the system. The key thing there that was identified in the survey is that folks were very concerned about diversions out of the system. We think, well, one of the reasons, particularly coming out of a low-level period, is that folks were concerned that somehow water was being diverted out of the system at a rate beyond the rechargeability. And what we're trying to show through that is that the actual amount of water that's diverted out of the system, and there's only really one place in Chicago, is actually half of what's artificially diverted into the system. So we're on the plus side in terms of water balance, water budget, with either diversions into the system or diversions out of the system. And then we show how that works throughout each lake, because looking at factors like evaporation, precipitation, and runoff, that's a little bit different within each of the lakes themselves. And then the other piece that we show in this infographic is that trying to look at the topic of diversion, something that folks are very concerned and interested to know more about. How does that compare with something like precipitation? So if you look at the amount of, so each of these, think of these as an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The amount of water that's diverted out of the system is actually equivalent to 2 Olympic swimming pools, but the amount of water that comes into the system through precipitation is vastly greater than that. So in terms of the whole diversion issue, we're just trying to share information with folks to help them understand. Another key piece that we've included in the infographics is kind of what's the historic trend. So this is the past 100 years. This is the average here in the red line, and you can see it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. We live within a variable system. This hasn't just been something of the last couple of years. pretty large team of several units of the University of Wisconsin. And 2 teams in Canada, one working on, again, shoreline and bluffs just north of the Sarnia area, from the University of Toronto. They've been particularly looking at how does that community need to address and respond to the issues of bluff erosion during high level periods. And then the last group has particularly been focusing in on the Georgian Bay area and bringing some really sophisticated visualization tools and data tools to help folks see what does it mean to have be the levels, to be a meter or 2 meters higher than what they currently are. What would that look like in our community? Or what would it mean if it would go down a meter or 2? So they've been focused on that part of the Georgian Bay area with a particular community there, bringing these visualization tools and seeing how the community responds to the tools and whether it's a useful approach. So all of these have just been planning grants. All of them, we gave each of the teams only $10,000 to kind of have some meetings, do some preliminary work, test things out to see if it's worth going further with that work. And that's what we're doing right now. I just was looking at them today. We received the proposals from all the teams to kind of move forward into the next phase. And I should say we're fortunate to have financial support from the Office of the Great Lakes to support a couple of the teams in the next phase. To kind of dig into it a little bit deeper, take what they've learned from the planning grants and move ahead with coming up with some options for those communities to really live with lake level variability and come up with some plans for action. And so that's what I wanted to share with you about lake level variability and the project that we're working on. And now my colleague Nicole is going to talk about what we're doing on campus related to some water conservation issues.
So the Planet Blue Masters program is a program that's open to any faculty, staff, or student at the Ann Arbor campuses. It's also open to community members and alumni. You just have to have a UMich ID, a friend account will do, and anyone can sign up for a friend account to get started. And it's a way for anyone that's interested in sustainability on campus but not yet engaged to get involved, and it's really on the individual level. So we start with that grassroots individual level and ramp it up from there. It starts with an online training of 5 modules oriented around our goal areas in the areas of energy, food, waste, water, and community. Each of those introduce the problem, they talk about what we're doing on campus, they have fun interactive activities, and then ideas for what you can do as an individual and you take pledges of action. And then we make it entertaining and quick. Each one of those takes 5 to 10 minutes to complete. This really came out of the university's commitment to build an ethic of sustainability on campus. There was also a survey done a few years ago that showed a big portion of our community was in that level of interested in sustainability and not yet engaged. So this is really an outlet for anyone to get involved and get started and be engaged and connecting them to the great resources across the university. And start taking action at an individual level and then taking action in their workplace or in their classes, in their school, in their residence halls, for our on-campus, reducing our on-campus footprint and also in their own individual lives. This initiative is part of the Planet Blue initiative and all our campus sustainability goals, which came out of another IA process. So we have a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 25%, reducing waste by 40%, and reducing, I talked about our community goal of building that culture, that ethic of sustainability on campus. But we have a goal of protecting the Huron River by reducing runoff and the stormwater and pollutants, but also reducing our land management chemical use by 40%. And these goals are set on a baseline level of 2006, and we're supposed to reach them by 2025. A fun fact is we've reached our chemical reduction goal on campus by switching to a lot of organic fertilizers and switching the way we manage some of the land. So that's probably our biggest success story right now in this area, which is really exciting. For an example of how we use, in our training modules, that's where we use the research and the expertise at U of M. So for example, we have information in there on why the Great Lakes is important to our region economically, socially, recreationally, and how it's part of our culture here in the state of Michigan. what U of M is doing, so talking, we don't have the IA in there yet, but when it's completed, talking about the water level, IAs, everything that's going on across the university from engineering to SMRE. Our energy module also has a big section, or includes a lot of information on the effects that climate change can have in our Great Lakes region and what it's having on the lakes, or its potential. After the training, we do a bunch of different follow-up opportunities for people to get engaged and taking individual actions. One of the techniques that we use is the opportunity to make online pledges of action. So this is an example. You can go onto our dashboard and make a pledge. So I will volunteer with the Huron River Water. Involvement ones. The ones that are more quantitative, so this is one, I will take shorter showers, actually goes in and estimates how much carbon emissions you're preventing, how much water you're saving, and then we also have a how much waste you're preventing category as well. And we show these as individual statistics and as well as community statistics. So everyone that's gone through this training and taken this pledge, what difference are we making together? The ones that don't have that quantitative impact, or it's not as, we didn't have sure enough data to do that, we still talk about the importance of taking that action and what the bigger benefit of doing that is, the most impact you can have as an individual. And then once again, building off into that community impact. So how we use the research at U of M, so we constantly update these training modules. So we work with the Sustainability Culture Indicators Project, which is another one that John is part of the leadership of, that measures knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors on sustainability through the U of M community, so faculty, staff, and students. We use that to let people know what are the social norms at U of M. So on campus, most people use a reusable water bottle, which is great. And that's a great thing to tell your coworker that really doesn't want to use a reusable water bottle and it's stuck on their styrofoam cups. For the water levels IA, so that's once that information is completed, we can incorporate that into the training to show what's going on with water levels in the Great Lakes region, how that affects sustainability in the larger context, so it's beyond environmental. We can create new action pledges, so if there's anything applicable, like if you're a shoreline property owner, make sure you're doing this. If there's any recommendations that come out of that IA, we can then incorporate it into this program. And then we do ongoing training and in-person workshops and things like that whenever they're relevant, especially when people come with us with new on-campus programs or new research. So we do a monthly newsletter, and this is an example of our September one where we highlighted some of the new tools. This one was focused on protecting native habitats in Michigan. So some of our Museum of Zoology set out a new app where you can look at different habitats and research different animals throughout the state of Michigan at different locations, like zoos and preservations, and it's great. And also talking about our involvement is a BioKids initiative working with schools, primarily in Detroit, getting them that outdoor education and knowledge, which is great. So we connect them to new research that's coming out of U of M, and then also initiatives on campus, what they can get involved with. So we know best practices are to plant native plants. So we've done tours of our arboretum to actually point out native plants, and had workshops so where do you think we should have more native plantings on campus, and actually had them block out blocks and worked with some of our leading researchers on those issues, and also our ground staff were like, yeah, we could do it there. No, we can't do it there because we didn't think of this issue, and bringing all those different perspectives together to really make a culture of sustainability and make sustainable change in action on campus. So currently the program has over 3,000 people that have at least started the training and gone through it. 2,400 of those have completed the training, so have done all 5 modules, have received a certificate, are actively involved, get the newsletter. And this has led to over 19,000 action pledges that have been completed, so that shows some pretty great community scale data. And that includes, so altogether it's been over 5 million gallons of water saved and over 5 million pounds of greenhouse gas emissions prevented. which is pretty fun. And we've only had this impact data for about a year now. So that is all I had on Planet Blue Ambassadors, and I wanted to invite John back up here for any questions.
Yeah, we just shared a lot of information with you about two related but very different programs. So let's see what kind of questions or comments folks had about it. Yes?
You indicated the last 2 years was a little bit different pattern in the levels of the lakes. Do you have any hypotheses or theories about what might be contributing factors?
Many folks are pointing to the cold winters and the ice cover, less evaporation. Also the Great Lakes folks, anything you want to add to what's been different the past couple of years?
Well, a lot is the, I'm going to say this incorrectly, but the El Nino phenomenon
Weather
that we're
patterns.
dealing with.
Yep.
Weather pattern changes.
Not too hot summers, so less evaporation.
Yeah, storminess, I think, is a new coin word that was proper, but it's more intense storms causing intense flooding. So it's the weather patterns that is on a global basis, but it does affect our Great Lakes because of the body of water.
I think the ice, well, my reading on it, I'm not the ultimate expert on this, but my reading, the ice cover has been really significant. I think at some points in the last 2 winters, it's been over 95% ice cover. When you have that, evaporation essentially stops, right?
So you're keeping the water in the
keeping
system.
the water in the lake. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, this question may or may not have any relevancy as far as the levels of the Great Lakes is concerned. But yesterday evening, I had a call doing a survey. The survey, it sounded like it was from Enbridge because it was asking a lot of questions about the underground, the under the water wall pipeline.
Straits, yeah.
And I noticed you didn't make no comment on that. And I know it's controversial, but I was on the phone for over 30 minutes answering questions that a lot of which I didn't know I was talking about.
So your questioning survey results become a profession.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's based on the fact that I did teach. No, seriously. Again, I didn't hear any comments about that, and I don't know the relevancy as far as water levels are concerned. But there is potential for contamination as far as the water is concerned. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's not a topic that we've been looking at with the water levels project, but we have been doing some work on the topic. Dave Schwab, about a year ago from the Water Center, did some pretty interesting modeling of if there would hypothetical spill of a particular type of resource, oil, over a particular period of time, where would it end up? And that generated a lot of interest in terms of showing it, given how it's not just water, the water just doesn't flow from Lake Michigan into then Huron and then it's down, it goes back, it goes this way, it goes, moving quite a bit back and forth. And that, I think, raised some awareness about the issue, along with other work that folks were doing about what's with the 60-year-old pipeline, and is it okay? Do we need to be doing more? Or should it be shut down a whole range of things? I'd say the state did a report on it, and I think where things stand right now, and somebody correct me if you know more on this, is that there will be a call very soon for some additional study on the topic, looking both at alternatives to the pipeline. So there are other ways of moving the oil, and the other analysis will look at, do we have sufficient insurance in place if there would be a spill? And we'd be very interested in contributing to that, but I think we're waiting for the state to release the call for proposals to do that work. So it's something we're very aware of, but we haven't done, other than the modeling, we haven't engaged in it yet.
Enbridge must be anticipating that you're developing something in consideration of an alternative to
My understanding is that they're going to pay for both of those reports.
Their question was very clear in terms of what they were seeking, asking questions such as, do you believe and do you support the idea of, and so are you aware that they have a cleaning model for the pipeline and all that?
They've been very vocal about their approach and how they're addressing safety and maintenance and monitoring and what they would do in terms of shutting it down. So they've been very active in the discussions throughout, and my understanding is that the call for these two analyses, the two reports that are going to be done, Enbridge will actually be responsible for funding those. So I think we're very engaged in the work. Yes.
Traditionally, landowners along the shore, when the water's high, build a seawall with rocks or cement or wood to keep the land from going out to sea and their cottage falling in. Is that going to be one of the things you'll be addressing in terms of, in your study about how to handle, because I'm sure the argument can be made that we should just let it naturally happen, but then everybody loses their place into the lake.
It's individual owners, it's municipalities who are trying to run the marinas. There's lots of different groups that are impacted. So yes, we're looking at what's currently done and what are some options for landowners. I think we won't be advocating a particular approach, but I think trying to look at the range of options in terms of including no action and what that would mean.
Do you publish your findings on your website? And
Yes.
Do you keep updating it, or do you move off of an issue onto the next issue?
Yes, both and. Sometimes things end. Like I don't think we're going to be doing much more on hydraulic fracturing topic, but we'll just see. I don't know. But like with the campus one that Nicole talked about, that was one that we did a couple of years ago. When President Soliso came in last year, he charged us with, we were waiting to do a 5-year update, and it was only about 3.5. He said, no, it's time. We need to move more aggressively on some of these things. So we are up. That's one where we weren't done with it. We're continually involved with it. Many of the programs that Nicole is leading are kind of ongoing efforts related to that. But yes, everything is publicly available on our website, and we often try to make a significant effort to engage folks along the way, not just wait until the end and say, here it is, isn't it wonderful, or not, but kind of, what are you thinking about this? What are your concerns at different points along the way, either doing public meetings, webinars, having online comment forums. That was something we really invested a lot of time in with the hydraulic fracturing one, because there were a lot of people that were very concerned about it for very different reasons. So we try for very different reasons. So we try not to just leave it to the end and try to keep people engaged. With the tracking one, we released first technical reports, and we got feedback on those. And then we also did a draft report, and then made significant revisions to the final version of that based on its public input. And then everything, the final version, the website, but also if you're familiar with the university's library system, there's something called Deep Blue, where lots of research and student projects and reports like this end up, and try to make sure it's listed there too, and then all the other stuff, making sure it's in. So you can find it easily find it in your Google search.
Question. For those that are interested, jumping back to the Enbridge issue, the Michigan Attorney General's Office and the DEQ joined together and put together a report with some requirements for them that is available to the public. We released it about 6 weeks ago. You can Google search Michigan Attorney General Enbridge, and the report will come up and you can review it. The feedback that we've gotten from our office has been really positive by especially people in that area that are on the island or in northern Michigan, and would obviously have the greatest effect should something go wrong.
Thank you. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit more about the diverting of the water? From your chart, it looked like there isn't near as much as everybody seems to think there is, but yet there are some states that say, well, that's free water, we should be having some of it.
So the diversions that I'm referring to in the graph that I think Nicole's going to try to pull up, there are 2 diversions into artificial diversions, say it that way, artificial diversions into the, yes, there we go, in northern Lake Superior. And then there's the diversion out of the system in the Chicago area. The diversion out is about half of what's diverted in. But I don't know if that's addressing what you're talking about.
No, but some of the states still say, well, if you've got so much, I mean, why can't we still have more? And it just seems like that comes up every once in a while. When there's all this free water there, why should just these states keep it to themselves?
And that's something-
Why doesn't it come out to
You were talking
Nevada?
One of the projects, Nicole, of the Great Lakes Compact.
Yeah, there's the
It's not a lot.
Great Lakes Basin Compact, which is an international agreement that says that any water withdrawn from the Great Lakes has to go back into the Great Lakes. So only if you're within the Great Lakes Basin, which is the natural watershed, can you then divert water out. Chicago was a special exception because they were already doing it and kind of get the rule passed.
A long time.
Yeah.
So there really isn't that much, there isn't, I don't know if you're talking about like diverting water to the southwest US.
Just anywhere.
Yeah, that's, can't happen currently. I'll just make a public statement about that currently. Everything can be tested, right? Yeah. Yes, sir.
But to follow up on a comment you made, Inspector,
Yeah.
you made a comment that the water levels affect where the fish are, which affects commercial fishing.
In terms of habitat?
Follow up.
Yeah, my understanding is that if the, say, water level is low and the fish habitat is a particular area, that can affect the habitat in terms of either low water levels. If you add in things like climate change and changing water temperatures, that can also significantly
Do they move
impact.
around?
And they're in different areas, and my understanding is the agreement, it's drawn on the map. This is where you will fish. And if that shifts for some reason, either because of water temperature or water levels, your geographic line on the map may shift outside. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why they're very concerned thinking about the variability. How do we best plan forward, knowing that where we're currently fishing now might not be the place where we're fishing 20, 30 years from now. Yes, sir.
2 years ago, there was, when the water levels were low, there was decisions being contemplated about stopping the flow of water so that the levels would rise. Some folks along the lakeshore are a little skeptical that that decision wasn't made, and that's part of the reasons why the levels rose at that point in time. Just coincidence that amazing how this was being discussed and they said that it wasn't going to be stopped, and then all of a sudden the levels rose. And I just wondered, were the governments not conspiring with the shipping industry to raise the levels, even though they said that they weren't going to raise the levels or stop the flow?
I am not the appropriate person to
Okay.
But go ahead, Michelle, but the point is, no, there was not a...
But you understand that it just
Perception.
nice coincidence.
I think it's just important to say there are no artificial infrastructure barrier controls anywhere through Michigan, Huron, through Erie, right? So all of that is flowing water.
I know, but I'm saying that there was discussion 2 years ago. There were public hearings on the matter to somehow stop the flow so that the Great Lakes would rise up.
So I'm Michelle Felder, I'm with Michigan's Office of the Great Lakes. And so we do have a control structure at the Sioux Locks that does control the water from coming in from Lake Superior down through the rest of the Great Lakes system. So there is a board, the Lake Superior Control Board, I think is what it's called, or the Water Level Control Board. They make decisions. The Corps of Engineers is kind of the lead entity, and we work with our Canadian partners on determining those levels. And so those compensating gates can be opened or closed depending on what level needs to be established for the lakes as a whole. So there is work ongoing around the water level discussion related to the inputs from Lake Superior. But otherwise, that is, in fact, that is the only control structure that we have on the lakes currently.
There was also a lot of discussion in terms of adding some type of control measure in the St. Clair River. The most frequently mentioned one, I think, was some type of large inflatable device on the bottom of the river that could hold back water. I don't know whether from an engineering perspective, that would actually do what folks hoped, but that was one of the most common ideas that was mentioned.
So if you're really interested in learning more about the lake level issue, the International Joint Commission put out a report a year or two ago, the International Upper Great Lakes Study, and an ongoing long-term study around the lake level. And they do talk a little bit about the control structures in the St. Clair Detroit River system as a potential option. It was something that was brought forward, I think, in the 60s, when the levels, were very different than what they are today. So the International Upper Great Lakes Study might be a good reference document if you're interested in learning more about the history and kind of where the International Joint Commission kind of weighed in on that particular issue.
Yep. Okay. One more question. To respond to this, Grand Rapids water from Lake Michigan, but I understand that somebody had told me that City of Flint is building a pipeline to Lake Huron to get their water from Lake Huron.
That's my understanding is that's the future plan. They've currently
I don't know if
gone
they're
back
starting
to
it or-
Detroit water system. Right? Anybody else have?
Yes, they've started.
They've started it?
Yes.
Carragandi.
Yeah, that's the new authority.
Yeah.
No.
The point is that they're within the basin. So
Yeah,
they're
they're within the
allowed- so
basin.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
versus that city in Wisconsin.
That was trying to get
Yes.
it outside the basin.
Yep, try to get.
Yes, sir.
There's another aspect of water that's been in the news a lot this year. That's flooding. Is there anything you study about that in Michigan, particularly?
Yes, particularly with our work with cities in terms of climate adaptation, thinking about what they currently understand their flood zones to be and how those are being updated, both by the federal government and also just some of the cities wanting to do their own planning, looking at the 100-year storms that seem to be coming every couple of years now. So yes, that's definitely part of what we do, particularly within the Climate Center, and I'd say it's a part of one of the teams for this project, the local kind of land use planning team is really looking at the issue of flooding.
And there's a great set of fact sheets out there through the Glacier City project now, talking about different climate adaptation plans that address kind of.
Yeah, we work very closely with Thunder Bay in Kingston, Ontario, Flint in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Toledo and Dayton, Ohio. And through the work with those communities, developed a set of resources and the fact sheets that Nicole offered in terms of what those cities are doing to address different issues they were concerned about, whether it was flooding or heat stress amongst vulnerable communities. And we have those up as resources on the website. One more.
Maybe it's a quick question, but you talked about saving water on campus and so forth. Why is it important to save water when we have so much water available?
Yeah, a lot of that comes down to the treatment of water. So, in our particular, some of the highest utility user, electricity users with water treatment plants, because the energy used to move the water around and to treat it, there's very expensive, so that's what we can't have, even if we do have this abundance of water. And it's interesting on campus, I would say, because we have students coming from the West and comparing those different cultures of water use and how much more the liberals
They're all shocked that we don't have more stringent economics.
or like shopping dorms because their homemakes aren't turning on the water while they're brushing their teeth. Absolutely shocked.
Quick back here. A lot of people have had this very couple of years ago. The president came up with it. And they absolutely could not believe the size of the lakes. And there's water everywhere. Everywhere I turned, you could water. It was just a shock. I went and been back twice.
Please join me in thanking our speakers, Dr. John Kellogg and Nicole Orr. I hope that we don't have another 100-year flood before you have a chance to do more of your study on your own.
On behalf of the University of Michigan Alumni Association and Government Relations, I'd like to give you these tokens of our esteem and appreciation. And also, I want to thank all of you for your participation today in the discussion, the Office of the Great Lakes and the Attorney General's Office. Thank you for all that you shared. And I think this is an ongoing discussion. And I want to thank Representative Bill LaJoy and Representative Sarah Roberts and Representative Martin Howrylak for joining us today as well. We had an opportunity in 2015 to look at all kinds of issues. We've talked about the environment and education, and we've talked about the cars of the future. In 2016, starting in January, we're going to look at all kinds of things, like how we pay for electricity, how we deal with sustainability. What about robots and drones? What about the new innovations in medicine where they're using 3D printers to help save lives? And we're also going to talk about innovative education. We'll invite back Dean Deborah Ball, Dean of the School of Education. And we'll talk about elections, which will be coming up in 2016. So we hope that all of you will plan on joining us as we roll out those opportunities coming up and starting in January. And until then, again, I thank you for your support of the Wolverine Caucus, and I'll say, go blue.
No.